Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to make my contribution on this very, very, very important motion. And I'm very happy that it has come at a time when this House has come out as a house of reason. Today, Mr. Speaker, sir, as I rise to contribute to this motion, I'm worried about the future generation. I'm worried about the burden which we in the current generation are continuing burdening the future generation. Our consequences, choices have consequences, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, when you think about the cost of borrowing in this country currently, and we think about this motion today and the actions of our voting today, either yes or no, tomorrow, Mr. Speaker, sir, the cost of borrowing in this country will skyrocket. Our economy will continue to stagnate. We've got to look at the whole issue of the economy in a much broader spectrum and ask ourselves, if we allow Treasury to raise the ceiling of the debt or borrowing in this country, how are we going to be able to ensure that we work closely with Treasury to oversight to ensure that we don't continue getting deeper down in the hole? My biggest worry, Mr. Speaker, sir, is that currently the current government is trying to carry out every single project in this country. Private sector is not being given an opportunity to be able to help the economy grow. Monopoly, Mr. Speaker, sir, is something which is being encouraged with the heavy borrowing that we are borrowing. Mr. Speaker, sir, I was looking through this report which has been tabled, and by looking at the rates, interest rates that the government is currently paying from commercial bank, it worries me. And this is the point where I agree with Senator Gideon Moi that we must retire these commercial loans. When you borrow, and you're borrowing in foreign currencies, Mr. Speaker, sir, and the interest rates are as high as 7.5% from a bank called Citigroup Global Market Europe, all the way down to some Sound Can Corporation of about 6%, it worries me. We have to figure out how are we going to be able to control our debt? How are we going to be able to manage that debt? So that, because we have put ourselves in this situation where we want to support the Big Four agenda, where we are allowing government to get into what the private sector does, construct houses, then we have to figure out and ask ourselves whether we can really continue borrowing or whether we have to change the entire policy. Mr. Speaker, sir, I think it's a high time that this House send a very strong message to Treasury and to the executive that the Big Four agenda may not succeed. And I think it is a high time that if we are going to allow Treasury to continue borrowing, then by all means, we have to be willing to say no to certain projects being constructed in this country. Like the housing. I've seen in the list of the projects which are supposed to be paid by the borrowing, housing is number one. Why not leave that to the private sector? Mr. Speaker, sir, the problem we are putting ourselves in is that we are not scrutinizing every single document which is being provided to us by Treasury. There's really no problem in borrowing. We're in a country where we want to live with, beyond our means. So we have to continue borrowing. My point is this. If we are going to support this, which I'm inclined to support it, I think we have to come up with proper regulations on what the government can be able to undertake and what they cannot undertake. There's no way I would support this if we'll allow the government to continue saying we want to support the Big Four agenda, build houses, universal health care, and everything, yet when you go into the manufacturing sector, monopoly still thrive. Mr. Speaker, sir, if you go to Mombasa today, at the port, next to the port. There are companies that want to be able to build their own industries, but they are not being allowed because of monopoly. So I think as we vote for this, we have to be prepared, and we have to tell Kenyans that the cost of borrowing, even locally, will be higher. The interest rates locally will be higher. There's no way we are going to allow the government to borrow more and then we expect the interest rates to go down. We have to be realistic and tell Kenyans that even this interest cap that we are talking about, it will have to go away. It will have to go away because, Mr. Speaker, sir, next year, the majority of the budget of the Kenyan budget will be to repay the loans. It is sad, but it's a reality, Mr. Speaker, sir, that we are part of that generation which will burden the future generations. Although I do so with a very heavy heart, because there's really nothing I can do. I have to support this, because one of the things that I've learned in this parliament, Mr. Speaker, sir, is that although it is shameful, and I have to be honest, I stand by what
Senator
I say.
Manga. Order.
It is quite sad.
Order.
But it's a reality, Mr. Speaker, sir. It is a reality. We are living in an economy where it is slowing. It is completely slowing down. People are suffering out there, Mr. Speaker, sir. I have never in my life got into a point where when you go in and you try to buy someone a drink, you expect them to buy you another drink. They tell you, boss, I have not been paid for the last 1 or 2 weeks. This economy is slowing down. So we have to bite the bullet, but allow Treasury to raise the debt, the ceiling debt, but the debt ceiling, but try to encourage them to leave private sector to help build this economy. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rest my case.